The Seahawks were back on the practice field this weekend, coming out of their preseason opener against the Raiders. What went down at the VMAC as the Seahawks shifted gears towards their second preseason game? We'll be breaking it all down here on a jam-packed Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, for our Monday show by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it, whether you're tuning in nearby from Sumner, Washington, or over in Helena, Montana. We appreciate each and every one of you. We are going to be diving into some takeaways from the last 2 days of training camp, Saturday and Sunday's practice. Today was a walkthrough, so nothing really to report from today's session, but lots of intriguing nuggets from Saturday and Sunday. And then we're going to be revisiting the preseason opener with our rookie rankings. Which rookies stood out to us the most in this first contest against the Raiders? And then we'll wrap up with a revisiting of Bubble Watch with 4 position competitions that are still very much up in the air midway through the preseason. This episode is brought your way by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. After taking a much-deserved day off on Friday, the Seahawks were back on the practice field Saturday and Sunday. Saturday just in a helmet. Sunday, a full padded practice. Getting back to work or gearing up for the 2025 season. They got their second preseason game coming up against the Kansas City Chiefs. And there were a lot of exciting developments in these two practices. But Rob, I want to shift focus to the thing that fans continue to ask about the most. Yes, I'm seeing the questions on social media. Well, who's going to start at right guard and who's going to start at center? Those continue to be the most pressing questions. Mike Macdonald still won't give us an answer other than today saying we hope to have this decided in the near future and announce starters. But I believe that those decisions have already been made. That is my opinion at this point, particularly at the right guard spot, because if Oluwatimi can't get his back figured out, that's starting to become a little bit more worrisome for me because he wasn't even participating in the walkthrough today. They tried to get him back out to practice 2 days ago, but right guard, Christian Haynes hasn't had a first-team rep in more than a week, Rob. Like, that is not a competition. If he was still in the mix there, he'd be getting first-team reps. Jalen Sundell has had to play exclusively at center because of Oluwatimi's injury. So that's kind of taken him out of this competition as well. It feels like as long as Anthony Bradford is competent against the Kansas City Chiefs and however long he plays in the second preseason game, I thought he looked pretty good in the first preseason game. I think as long as he's competent on Friday, that job is his to lose at this point.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. And I think that you articulated it well, Corbin. And if Oluwatimi was healthy, then the center competition, perhaps the right guard competition, Jalen Sundell would be there. But because that Oluwatimi has not been available, Sundell is just by default your starting center. And so that just basically eliminates any of the competition that we've been talking about at that right guard position. It's going to be Anthony Bradford. Christian Haynes has played a little bit of right guard, a little bit of center, a little bit of left guard, and hasn't played incredibly well at any one of the 3 positions. He's played okay at all 3, at least in my opinion. So yeah, at this point, if you had to play a game tonight, Jalen Sundell would be your starting center and Anthony Bradford would be your starting right guard. And so just by definition at this point, then it basically the right guard position does feel like it's no longer a competition if, as you said, Anthony Bradford and Jalen Sundell, respectively, both play well against the Kansas City Chiefs as expected.
Yeah, I think the center situation has changed a lot here with Oluwatimi's injury because I think he had won the job. I mean, Sundell was mostly working at right guard and his second team reps were center. So it felt like that was very similar, that Oluwatimi had just seized the job and it was his, and that may very well still be the case. That might be why they're keeping him in bubble wrap right now. Like, hey, look, we need you ready for week 1 because you're our starting center. But it just seems like whatever clarity fans have been wanting, I'm not sitting here proclaiming that those two are starting week one, but I would be stunned if those two are not starting in week one at this point. I think Bradford has won this job. And to be honest, Rob, it feels different than last year. Last year, it felt like it was a by default thing. It feels like this time around, Anthony Bradford has won this job. Like he has pushed the hand here for John Benton loves this guy. You can tell John Benton, I've talked about this a lot. You can read so much with his body language. Like if he does not like a rep, it is very obvious with the way that he carries himself body language wise. And I love coaches that are like that because, hey, sure. I don't even need to hear you say anything to know whether you like that rep or not. And he's seemed down on a lot of the things that Christian Haynes is doing on the practice field, even one-on-ones the other day. You can just tell that he was not happy with where things were at. And Anthony Bradford, he has gotten really excited about a few times during training camp for good reasons. So it does feel different than last year. It feels like Bradford is winning this job. The other thing I want to mention on offense, we know how bad this team was in situational football last year. They were 21st in third down rate. They were 21st in fourth down rate. So they were in the bottom third of the league in both of those categories. We saw them go out and go 7 for 10 in the first half, converting third downs against the Raiders with Drew Lock and some of their starters or projected starters in the lineup. They converted 70% of their third downs. Second half was not near as good, but that's backups beside the point. They come out on Saturday and on Sunday and situational drills. This offense was just rolling, particularly on Sunday when they had red zone drills going on. They were finishing drives. They had 4 out of 5 with the first team offense. They scored touchdowns on Saturday. All 3 offensive units converted in a fourth down drill. And you saw all 3 quarterbacks completing passes. It just feels like, I think it is all about the offense. I think it's the fact there's an identity here, Rob, and Kubiak's already pushing that. And it's clear there is a purpose. There's an intentionality to what they're doing. It's hard to have a good third and fourth down offense if you don't have those ingredients. We're seeing what happens when you have a play caller who's got a method to the madness.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's, I hate to oversimplify things, Corbin, but as you well know, if you can run the football, then passing the football is just so much easier. And I think that the reality is that the Seahawks are a significantly better running team this year than they were at any point last year. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons for it. I think that you also have some quarterbacks who, I don't mean any disrespect to Geno Smith. He was a very effective play action passer. Now, the eyes showed it, the statistics showed it. But I think the Sam Darnold is an upgrade in that regard. Obviously, with Jalen Monroe and his ability to be a dual threat quarterback, then he changes the game a little bit. And Drew Lock is a veteran, and I think that his ability also is accentuated when you have a quality running game and some pass protection. And the Seahawks just struggled in terms of running the football and any kind of pass protection a year ago. And I think that it's just making things a lot easier. And then again, an obvious statement, you have an offensive coordinator now that is just used to, calling plays and used to, or has an offense that is NFL proven, I guess I should say. And again, I mean, no disrespect to any of the previous players or coaches, but now you're using a proven system, and we're seeing some of the dividends.
Couple quick notes on the defensive side of the football. Shaquille Griffin back at practice. We finally got to see him the last couple of days get a handful of reps. But I will say this, he's got a real uphill climb. Josh Jobe on Saturday had 5 pass breakups in practice. He was all over the place, had a pretty good preseason opener as well. It feels like Shaquille Griffin right now, if he's going to be on the roster, but he is going to be a insurance policy at this point. To me, Josh Jobe, just with the fact Griffin hasn't been there and the fact Jobe has taken this opportunity and he has ran with it, that is definitely an uphill climb. And linebacker spot, you might see number 3 playing there a little bit right now. Nick Emanwari getting some drill work with the linebackers. Mike Macdonald was hinting today, well, it's because strong safety in the box, there's a lot of similarities, so they're doing a lot of drills with him. But with Tyrese Knight out currently, some of the other things going on there, that might be something to keep an eye on in terms of how they're going to use Nick Emanwari with that first team defense.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see just kind of the evolution Nicky and Warrior this upcoming season. I mean, it is going to be something that bears watching. I want to go back to the Shaquille Griffin thing. Look, I think it's similarly with some of the other veterans on this roster, like a Jonathan Hankins at nose guard. Look, you're talking about a veteran in Shaq Griffin. It's not going to take him a long time to kind of get himself ready. But as you said, Corbin, Josh Jobe played well, interception, of course, in the game against the Raiders, and played well besides that interception. Nehemiah Pritchard, of course, had an interception, a more impressive one, in my opinion. And so he also was playing well. So I just think that it's a good thing for the Seahawks to have a veteran player like Shaq Griffin, who's kind of coming into the fold now. Just going to be kind of that boost in the shot in the arm, a boost for the Seahawks defense. And it's just going to make a position that I was concerned about. Obviously, we haven't Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, but I still was concerned about the depth behind them. It's encouraging that we're seeing some of the players step up, and then Shaq Griffin coming in is just going to make a good position that much stronger for Seattle.
And for our listeners that are tuning in, just so that you guys are aware, I am dealing with some internet issues. I'm in a hotel, so if we have something that cuts out, my apologies. That's just going to be the way that this operates on the show right now with me. When we come back here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks, going to be taking a look at how the rookies played, revisiting it, that preseason opener. Rob and I are going to dish out our first Rook rankings of the season, looking at our top 5 rookie performances from that game against the Raiders. That'll be coming your way up next here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat. Get your draft board ready and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, Rob and I are, as always, playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years. I love how smooth the draft day experience is. Our Locked On League's been running through Yahoo for a long time. Easy setup, great mobile app, and the smack talk, it just hits different in the message boards, especially when I'm rubbing it in Rob's face after a victory. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and of course, more ways to win. To kick it off, Yahoo Fantasy just dropped Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo. The lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's just one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks got their first glimpse at their incoming rookie class, draft picks, undrafted players, on Thursday night when the Seahawks battled the Raiders at Lumen Field. A lot of exciting debuts that fans were able to see at Lumen Field. So now that we've had a chance to watch the All-22 film, we've revisited the game, Rob. It's time for our first Rook rankings of the 2025 season, where we look at where rookies are standing. Sometimes during the season, it'll just be kind of a quarterly report card, but this time it's just about this debut, this preseason opener against the Raiders. And Rob, I know that everybody's wanting to talk draft picks, but there's going to be a lot of undrafted flavor for both of us in our top 5 lists in terms of the top 5 players that we were impressed by as far as this rookie class for the Seattle Seahawks on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's the thing, Corbin, is that immediately after the 2025 NFL draft finished, I was asked to grade each team's draft for FoxSports.com, and I gave the Seahawks the highest grade of all 32 NFL teams with an A. There was only 2 other teams, the Buffalo Bills and the Las Vegas Raiders, that got A's. And yet, 2 of the 5 players that I'm going to be mentioning here, my top 5 rookies, I didn't mention in that draft breakdown because they were undrafted free agents, as you just mentioned. And that's the fun thing, is that we're actually going to be talking about some different undrafted free agents. Look, I thought that Jacardia Wright was spectacular. Undrafted free agent and the running back, had the touchdown, a great play on that particular score. I thought they also looked very good in all respects of this game. I thought that Connor O'Toole, another undrafted free agent, was really splashy in this game. Neither of them made my top 5. I'm going to start number 5 overall, working my way down. But 5th overall, Robbie Oots, the full personified what was a vastly improved running game against the Raiders, and I expect to continue throughout the entire season. I thought that he was spectacular. I'll just jump in real quick one more time with number 4 overall, Torrey Horton. Look, I thought that he had a spectacular rookie debut, a touchdown of his own. I thought that I would have liked to have seen him jump over the top to perhaps save his quarterback, Drew Lock, a little bit on the one interception. Drew Lock has since basically kind of raised his hand up and kind of accepted the blame for that. But still, I thought that those were 2 of the best rookies for the Seahawks in the tie that was the Las Vegas Raiders preseason opener.
Yeah, you and I have some similar guys on our list, but very different looking lists in terms of order. A few different guys. I've got Jacardia Wright at number 5 on my list. And everybody's that listens to our show is going to be like, oh, it's because it's a running back. Well, that's part of it. I'm sure that there's a little bias to running backs. But look, Jacardia Wright, he only had 34 rushing yards in this game, but he had a 45-yarder that was wiped out by a hold from Brady Russell that didn't need to happen. Like, Brady Russell didn't need to do that. Like, the run was going away from him. Jacardia Wright made a guy miss in the hole and then took off. And this guy is showing a lot of burst for a player who's 220 plus pounds. I was told he's closer to 225, and he looks the part when you watch him on the field. This is a big-bodied, physical back, really strong lower body, but he's got some quicks. He's got some burst to him, and we got to see that on a couple different occasions. But maybe what I was most excited about, the vision. He had an 11-yard run on a read option play where he astutely cut back against the grain very quickly, was able to turn what probably would have been bottled up into an 11-yard gain. His 1-yard touchdown at the goal line, he did a great job using his vision to find that crease and sneak his way into the end zone. I was just really impressed with what I saw from him. So Jacardia Wright comes in at number 5 for me. I've actually got the first rounder, Gray Zabel, coming in at number 4. And this does not mean that Gray Zabel did not make some really good plays, because that dude, he was Aunt Jemima out there at times. Like, he was buttering and serping up those pancakes, especially that second drive. I did think when I went back and watched the all 22, I thought the first drive, he looked like a rookie that was playing in his first game. There were definitely some reps where he looked like he got onto the front of his feet and he was lunging a little bit. He had a kind of wide placement with his base, wider than you want to see. So there were some things that I saw that didn't look great in that opening drive, but he finished it strong in the second drive. He was absolutely spectacular. Tonka Hemingway, he ran over him like a Tonka truck and bulldozed him into the turf. Again, he was dishing out pancakes. Pancakes looked really good in pass protection. So Gray Zabel comes in at number 4 on my list. A overall really good performance from him. And then at number 3, I've got my second undrafted player here on this list. If you were watching this game on TV, obviously I was in the press box, so I had a little different view on this. But when I went back and watched the all 22, I just kept saying, oh my goodness, there's 51 again, and there's 51 again. He just kept showing up time and time again. And there were a couple plays where you might not have seen it as a pressure, but he was getting into the backfield and he was speeding up the quarterback very quickly. And with his pass rushing ability, he blew up a couple runs. That 4th down QB sneak was not a first down. I will put that on my gravestone. That was not a first down, because Jared Ivey not only had stuffed the 3rd down QB sneak, he stuffed the 4th down one. And it was blatantly obvious. It was half a yard off on that play. And I just thought 51 was incredibly active in this football game against the run. You're seeing why he was a first-team All-SEC performer. And hearing what Jaron Reed had to say about him today, he is definitely a guy everybody needs to be taking notice of heading towards roster cuts.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, I have him as the number one rookie on my list here for all the reasons that you just articulated. I mean, Corbin, he was a monster out there. And look, I think that there has to be some acknowledgement of the fact that we're talking about an undrafted free agent who was playing the majority of his snaps in the second half of this football game. And so level of competition, I think, has to be acknowledged. But at the same time, he was absolutely dominant against a Raiders offensive line that had some rookies and had some guys who are fighting for their NFL lives as well. So for him to be as productive and as just a disruptive player as he was, snap in and snap out, it was the consistency that really jumped out to me. It was the consistency that jumped out for me for my number 3 player, and the guy that another undrafted free agent that I frankly was not expecting to be listing up here. I thought that I'd be talking about an Elijah Arroyo, a Nicky Manwari, certainly a Jalen Milroe, who I thought all had good rookie debuts, not great rookie debuts, the way that Amari Kite did. When he played as well as he did at the right tackle position to start this game and then switched over and then play at the left tackle position throughout much of the second half, I thought that he was spectacular. I thought his balance and pass protection, I thought that he was able to provide some punch in the running game as well. Amari Kite, to me, is a guy that, I think that a lot of Seahawks fans are not going to be talking about undrafted free agent offensive linemen. But at the same time, as we've talked about on so many occasions, Corbin, this is a different offensive line coaching staff. And I think that the proof is in the pudding, as I often like to say. Amari Kite was among the young rookie offensive linemen who were very impressive. I thought the Bryce Cable dude had a spectacular performance. I thought that Mason Richmond had a spectacular performance. They really were playing and moving the ball, which is why I thought that the Seahawks were going to absolutely dominate this game, not only in the trenches, but on the scoreboard as well. And then finally, Gray Zabel came in number 2 for me. And again, the level of competition is part of the conversation here. I thought that you articulated it well. In the first drive, he looked like a little bit of a rookie. He was a little bit off balance. But for him to play as well as he did the second and third drives of this game, and to really create some of the blocks that kind of sprung some of the biggest plays, both in terms of the running game as well as pass protection against quality competition, to me is a very, very encouraging sign that the Seahawks have a very good one starting at left guard for them moving forward.
And my number 2 and number 1, I've got a couple of 5th-round picks topping my list. Robbie Oots coming in at number 2. And it isn't just because I loved seeing a fullback out there. It's because it worked so magnificently. And for him on the second play from scrimmage, Max Crosby, an all-pro coming through the line, and there's absolutely no fear in Robbie Oots. He just comes up and whacks him. And then later in the drive, he shows off that he was a tight end that had 2 touchdown catches last year. He leaks out in a play-action play, and he looked like a really smooth pass-catching tight end on that play. Ends up picking up some yardage and trucks a guy while he's going out of bounds, because that's just what Robbie Oots does. Like, this guy wants to invite contact, whether he's a receiver, a blocker. Like, he just fits that fullback position. And then stonewall to safety on George Halani's touchdown run. So I strongly consider Robbie Oots at number 1, because I just thought everything he did in this game, like, he looked fantastic. And I just loved the look of those fullback sets, 2-back sets on offense for the Seahawks. But I got to go with Torrey Horton at number 1. I thought that he had the most well-rounded game of any of Seattle's rookies. The throw that Drew Lock made, it should have been 2 touchdowns for Torrey Horton. If that throw is where it needs to be, he would have scored 2 touchdowns in this game. He had another really nice catch where the defender was impeding him and got called for a penalty, and Horton worked through it anyway and caught the ball on an out route. And then spinning through a couple defenders to get his touchdown. The 5-yard kick or punt return he had was maybe the most magnificent 5-yard punt return I've ever seen. I mean, he made like 6 guys miss to get 5 yards, and he was still upset he didn't break the last tackle that he had there. I just am incredibly impressed by Torrey Horton, just the player, the guy, the way he takes care of his business. And I've seen a few people in our comment section. He's number 3 on the depth chart, and I think he's won that job. Yeah. I don't think it's a competition anymore. I think he is the number 3 receiver. He has earned that spot for the Seattle Seahawks. So he comes in at number 1 on my first Rook rankings of the season. When we come back, the bubble is going to be bursting pretty soon for a number of players as we get closer to roster cutdown day. We're going to be diving into 4 specific ongoing positional battles that bear more watching as we head towards the second preseason game here in the middle of August. We'll get to that up next here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices in the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. You've got the Mariners getting ready to continue their run going for a division championship. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download a Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the show. We are getting closer to the second preseason game, which really means we're getting a lot closer to roster cutdown day. It will be here before you know it. And there's going to be some bubbles that are going to be bursting on the Seahawks 90-man roster. A number of competitions for roster spots that are still very much up in the air. As I mentioned earlier, Rob, I think the last couple starting jobs that we thought were still up for grabs, I would make the argument that those have been decided. But that doesn't mean there's not drama at the back end of the roster for the Seattle Seahawks. And you and I identified 4 competitions to talk about today. We'll have 4 more we talk about tomorrow. I want to start on the offensive side of the football. And this is going to be one that is going to maybe irk some of our listeners because they're going to be like, well, why can't we have both? But under the premise of this particular drill, we're going to be talking about one or the other because, look, you can keep 4 running backs. However, that means you have to keep 1 less receiver or 1 less tight end. And sometimes it's easier to get running backs through the practice squad than it is an offensive lineman. Like, there are a lot of decisions that are going to go into play here. So the first bubble watch that we've got here on the bubble, we've got George Holani versus Damian Martinez, which this conversation now, Rob, I think is a really fascinating one after what we've seen at camp and this first preseason game.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, because George Holani, I thought was the best player on the field for the first half of that football game. And Damian Martinez, like, I'm a huge fan of him. I personally gave him a 4th round grade in this draft class. Thought that he should have been drafted as such. But a year ago, we saw George Holani sneak through waivers. And of course, Seahawks were able to release him and then bring him back onto the practice squad. I'm not so sure they're going to be able to do that. But at the same time, I feel very confident that if you try to do that with Damian Martinez, that he's going to get snatched up. So for my money at this point on August 11th, I still think that you have to go with the draft rookie Damian Martinez. But, I'd be nervous as all hell about releasing George Holani because I think that he, as I believed a year ago, is a legitimate NFL caliber back.
Yeah, listen, I'm a running back guy. I look at this offense and I think you need to have 4 backs on your 53. That's my opinion. So if we had that option, I'd be saying both these guys, because everyone that listens to our show knows how I feel about Damian Martinez, and I'm not putting too much stock in that first preseason game. I wouldn't be shocked if he comes out and is one of the best players on the field against Kansas City on Friday night, because we know the kind of talent that he has. However, This is not allowing me that option. It's picking between the two. And here is the reality. For the third running back, especially with the one that got hurt, like Kenny McIntosh, one of the big appeals about Kenny McIntosh is his pass catching and his ability to be that third down back. I don't see Damian Martinez fitting that mold near the way that George Halani does. I mean, George Halani catches the ball like a receiver. He had 90 catches at Boise State. Like, he is a very natural pass catcher. He's really solid in pass protection. He also had a tackle on kick coverage. And look, Damian Martinez, they're trying to find ways to get him on special teams, but that's not something he did in college. And he's having a really hard time acclimating to that. George Halani is he's maybe a top 5 special teams player, non-kicker, non-punter on this roster. He just is a football player. So I don't think you're sneaking Halani through waivers, and I don't think you're sneaking Martinez through waivers. I think both these guys are getting plucked up this time around. Halani last year, you got lucky. I think this year, with the film he's putting out there and just how teams value the guys that can do a little bit of everything, I think it'd be hard pressed. And there's a lot of teams that have had running back injuries hit already, not just the Seahawks. There would be teams wanting him. So I'm going to go Halani on this if I had to pick between them, because I think he has a much better all-around skill set, at least for right now. But that doesn't mean that I don't think both guys should be on the roster, because I do. Let's stay on offense at the receiver position. It's interesting. You know, I already stated my piece. Torrey Horton, to me, he is receiver number 3. It's not might be. He is receiver number 3, which creates a potential conundrum for a veteran in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And so I've got this one as our next bubble here. Derek Young versus Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, if you're just looking at the pay sheet, Rob, Valdes-Scantling has $3 million in guarantees on his 1-year contract. So the Seahawks might have 3 million reasons that he is on the roster in week 1. And he had some nice plays this weekend, albeit with the second-team offense. I mean, Horton has completely taken first-team reps from him. That's why, to me, Horton is receiver 3, no questions asked. But Derek Young has been a much better player in training camp overall. And we know how good of a special teams player he is. If you have to pick between these guys, I'm going with Derek Young on this. Like, your back-end receivers need to be great special teams guys, and Derek Young is. And I just think he brings a different skill set, whereas Marquez Valdes-Scantling, where's he going to fit in if Torrey Horton is ahead of him now as that field stretcher that can create on the vertical? I think that this does create a potential conundrum for John Schneider and Mike Macdonald.
Oh, no question. It absolutely creates a conundrum, but it's a good one. Because these are talented football players. And I think that you have to have the conversation with receivers and running backs as we are having them in conjunction here. Because if you are going to keep an extra player at one position, you probably are going to have to eliminate another player at the other position. And so because running backs are, and I hate to say this, but basically a dime a dozen, there's a lot of good running backs out there. And as you mentioned before with George Halani, while as versatile as he is a guy that, at least in college, has struggled with injuries. I think that he might be able to sneak through waivers. I think that Damian Martinez, while I don't think that he's necessarily going to sneak through waivers, at the same time, I think you also can find backs that can also be very productive, like a Jacardi Wright, for example, who we didn't even talk about. I don't know that you are going to find a player who can play multiple positions and be the seamstress or the stretch the field type of a guy like a Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And to your point about Derek Young, is there been any player that has had a better training camp, and gone from basically very low on the depth chart to really making a push as Derek Young? I mean, to me, he has been one of the most consistent players in this process. You want to basically congratulate and give a job to a player who has earned it, as Halani has, as Derek Young have. So I think that if the Seahawks if they feel like they're in a position where they are going to have to release either Derek Young or Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I think that they might keep both and cut a different player, maybe one of those running backs. So at this point, if I had to choose one or the other, I'm going to go with the younger player that is Derek Young. That said, I do think that Marquez Valdes-Scantling's ability to go over the top and play multiple positions on offense, not on special teams necessarily, but on offense, I think is something to consider as well.
Let's go to the defensive side of the football. We go away from these super athletic skill players to the big and heavies, the meat mashers at the DT position. And I feel like we need to talk about this because I don't know what's going on with Jonathan Hankins with the back issue, but we continue to get non-updates from Mike Macdonald on him. And it sounds to me like this very easily is going to have a chance to go into the regular season. So if that's the case, if you don't have Big Hank in week 1, I think you have to make a really strong argument for keeping both Quinton Bohanna and Brandon Peely, especially because they have both had pretty good training camps, and I thought they both looked good in the preseason game. With that said, this is all about picking one or the other. To me, this one's not debatable. Quinton Bohanna has been dominant at times in training camp. He had a couple dominant run stops in that preseason opener, playing early in the game against some starters for the Raiders. And oh, by the way, he's played more than 20 career regular season games for Aden Durde when he was in Dallas. Brandon Peely does not have that going for him either. Bohanna's 25 pounds heavier, and I think he looks more nimble at times when I watch these two guys in the practice field. To me, Brandon Peely would be – both these guys, I think you could slip through waivers. Maybe Bohanna gets plucked by somebody if they're needing a big guy, but – I think Peely is the natural to bring back on practice squad that you can elevate on game day a few times. But I think Quinton Bohanna has put out enough good tape there. And I just think the relationship with Aden Durde, I think that is your natural replacement for Hankins until Hankins is back or if he's back at this point.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And everything that you just said there on the nose guard position. I think that Mike Macdonald has been refreshing in how just straight up he has been with some of the answers that he's given to questions. And he almost sounds like a little bit like Pete Carroll coach speak when there's questions about Jonathan Hankins. And so that to me is interesting here. But yes, I think that Quinton Bohanna has just taken a whole different step in his game. Brandon Peely has as well, but not quite to the extent that Quinton Bohanna has. So to me, this is a no doubt about it. Quinton Bohanna makes this roster over Brandon Peely.
Let's go to our last one real quick, and we are going to what you still view as the maybe most pressing one for the Seahawks here and the ones we're looking at here, and that is the linebacker position, which I've got two names up here, but I'm going to throw a couple others into the mix here too in terms of ongoing roster competitions. Patrick O'Connell, if you had to ask me right now, I think Patrick O'Connell is the fourth linebacker for the Seahawks, and this almost feels more like a by default thing, though he did have a couple nice plays in coverage the other night on Thursday. We haven't seen De'Aaron Jackson emerge the way that I thought he was going to. He's had a pretty so-so camp at best as an undrafted rookie. Jamie Sheriff was impressing and then missed a couple of practice, didn't play in the preseason opener, which for a guy changing positions, he needs these reps. He was out there today, so I'm hoping that means we're going to see him Friday night because Jamie Sheriff's got that edge rusher knife working for him still, where he's still getting reps there. A hybrid guy is going to have a much better chance to make a team, and he's a good special teams guy as well. You could throw Josh Ross in this mix, but he's recovering from a broken hand that he had surgery on. So who knows when he is back, and he's never played a defensive snap in the NFL. I feel like there's limitations, even though he has familiarity with the defense. I'm going to say this right now. I'm hoping that Patrick O'Connell's the guy early, but I'm hoping Jamie Sheriff gets on this roster at some point because I'm seeing a lot of progress from him, and it's just the fact that he can also go down and rush off the edge. When you can have a guy that can he can kill two birds with one stone. That's the kind of guy that you want to have out there on defense for you, Rob.
No, I 100% agree with you again. I think because that Jamie Sheriff has not been able to get onto the field in the preseason so far and show the other 31 NFL teams out there that he can successfully be an off-ball linebacker, then they're just going to be going off of his tape previously where he was on Seattle's practice squad. He's on Carolina's, actually gone to the field for the Carolina Panthers as well, but still wasn't so good that I think that he's guaranteed to get snatched away from another other NFL team. So until Jamie Sheriff proves that he is going to be somebody that's going to get stolen away from him, that to me is what's going to leave him more likely to be the guy that doesn't make the initial 53, but it's a huge priority to bring back as far as a practice squad guy. And Patrick O'Connell, to your point, Corbin, he's been on the Seahawks for the last couple of years. I think that they trust him. I think just his ability to play in run support as well in coverage as well as in special teams, it feels like almost unprompted that Mike Macdonald mentions Patty O, as he likes to call him, or Patrick O'Connell. And so I think that at this point, if you had to choose one or the other, obviously you got Tyrese Knight, and of course with Ernest Jones the fourth, they're going to be your starting linebackers. But we're talking about the backups behind them. I do think that Patrick O'Connell and Drake Thomas are going to be your primary backups, and then to me, again, a Jamie Sheriff or possibly a Josh Ross, as you said, coming off of the injury. Those are the guys that I think are going to be up a little bit higher than a guy like a De'Aaron Jackson at this point.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back tomorrow, final open training camp practice is coming up for the Seahawks. We'll be diving into takeaways from that, and we'll continue our roster bubble conversation with 4 other ongoing competitions on offense and defense. You won't want to miss it. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.